And we're live.
Okay, welcome to Middlesex County Council, Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022 at 1 p.m., our regular meeting. Before I call this meeting to order, I just have a few remarks to deliver. Tonight, among many others, I will be found in the parking lot of the Thames Valley District School Board. We'll be there for two reasons. The first reason is that county residents are extremely concerned with the possibility of losing one rural trustee and being replaced with an urban representative. At this time, we have equal representation of rural and urban. Tomorrow, that may be changed. To use the argument of representation by population is inherently flawed in this circumstance. If we apply this argument to other services, there would be no rural medical facilities. The 4-county hospital in Newbury should not exist. The Strathroy Middlesex General Hospital should not exist. However, they do exist and serve a valuable service to the county, same as our rural schools. The flaw in the argument is that our rural residents have no control over population in the rural areas. The Planning Act is designed to keep growth to existing settlement areas and protect our agricultural lands. This is acknowledged in the provincial policy statement and specifically mentions that rural areas receive reasonable population. To not have equal representation moving forward is extremely concerning and unfair to our rural students. There has been a long-standing injury between our rural and urban areas that should have been healed. And the idea behind the Rural Task Force report was to help heal these wounds. However, we are here again with our rural residents feeling uncomfortable, suspicious, and ignored. This is the second reason I will be attending, is to support the findings of the Rural Education Task Force. I'm extremely worried that the hard work and input that went into this document will be shelved. The draft report is a culmination of 2 years of worth of work in partnership with school board staff, rural trustees, municipal leaders, and appointed citizens. Consultations were held with county residents and concerns and suggestions were made. It's important that this report is recognized, and to see correspondence stating that some of the school trustees have not read the report is extremely concerning. I thank the local MPPs who have supported the concerns of rural residents by writing letters to the TVDSB, and also to thank you to the Middlesex Federation of Agriculture for their comprehensive letter representing the membership. It would be much appreciated if the school board would open and allow the public to attend this meeting in person. It would be appreciated if the doors were open and the meeting was conducted in an open, transparent fashion. It would be appreciated that we do not lose sight that all everyone wants is for our children to feel supported, to feel included, and to receive the gift of the excellent education that Ontario taxpayers pay for. Okay, so moving on. Any pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, then I'm going to ask that the minutes of the March 8th, 2022 budget meeting of County Council and the minutes of the March 8th, 2022 meeting of County Council be approved as presented. Looking for a mover? Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Mayhew. Anyone against? Seeing none. Now, move it that the council adopt the recommendations of the committee of the whole as set out in the minutes of the March 8th, 2022 regular meeting. Looking for a mover? Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Corneliuson. Anyone against? So carried. Next, we have the closed session minutes of the March 8th, 2022 meeting of County Council. Then I have a motion that they be approved as presented. Councillor Burkhart-Jessen, seconded by Councillor Vanderheyden. Anyone against? Seeing none. We know we have no deputations, no inquiries of notice of motion. No reports. And under new business, I'd like to welcome Miranda Bothwell. She's joining us today, and she's going to be talking about the Middlesex London Paramedic Service COVID vaccine initiative. Welcome, Miranda, and whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Warden. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. Marcy, I don't know if you want me to share my screen or...
Chris has it. Oh, here it goes.
Beautiful. Thank you. So it is my pleasure as the acting superintendent of vaccine operations with Middlesex London Paramedic Service to update council on our Middlesex London Paramedic Service COVID vaccine initiative. So our vaccine initiative started in late May 2021 out of an abundance of advocacy from then Warden Burgerhart Judson, and with support from Middlesex County Council and the province of Ontario. We started our vaccine initiative with hopes to really focus on bringing vaccine to the people. This was in the wave of trying to get out those second and third doses to all of the community members. We received a shipment of 2,000 Moderna vaccines to start off our initiative in late May, early June. Before we could get started, we went through all of the appropriate training on the proper storage and distribution of the vaccine, and we got our team out and going. Trying to click through here. Thank you, Chris. So June 9th was our first vaccine clinic. We did start by focusing on homebound clients. With our mandate of getting the vaccine out to the people, we really wanted to look at those homebound clients that were having typically mobility struggles getting out to the mass vac sites. At the time, there was only one mass vax clinic out in Mount Bridges and multiple set up in the city of London. So a few people really struggled getting to those sites. We also focused on our larger factory settings where workers, in particular shift workers, were having a really hard time trying to establish a set time to go out and get their vaccines. So that's where we started. June 9th was our first homebound day, which proved great success. With that, we started to get into our larger factories, Bondwell, Dashwood Industries, Nestle, the Meridian. Typically, we had 2 admin to support, and then we had 3 to 4 vaccinators out with us. Our Cargill drive-through vaccine clinic was held on June 24th and 25th. Very, very successful clinic. This was the first drive-through clinic that Middlesex London County region had seen at that time. So we were super excited that our team was able to offer this style of clinic. In the span of 2 days, we were able to administer over 990 Moderna vaccines, which was incredible. We saw all elements of the weather, from the heat to the wind to the rain, it was absolutely fantastic to see all of our community come together. We did have our ESU bus on site to support walk-up vaccines. We also partnered with Fanshawe College, and they provided their large ESU bus for us as well, so that we would have a place to shelter the vaccine and give our vaccinators and support staff some downtime. Throughout these clinics, we were working strictly with the Moderna vaccine, again, focusing on vaccinating clients ages 18 and up with their first or their second doses. Throughout the summer, so after we went through our first shipment of our 2,000 vaccine, we saw that great need And again, with the continued support by Warden and Middlesex County and the province of Ontario, we did receive additional Moderna vaccine. We also received a large refrigerator so that we could store a large amount of vaccine on site properly, which was fantastic. Throughout the summer, we focused on clinics again, those homebound clients, the larger factories. We also started getting into the community clinics. The support from all of the lower tier municipalities were fantastic. I remember our first meeting with all of the CAOs, and everybody just kind of sat there asking what they could do and how we could get it up and going. The picture that you see on your screen there is from our Elsa Craig clinic in July. I don't think Councillor Rupp will ever forget how hot that day was. He was definitely a fantastic trooper standing outside with the umbrella. We were trying to get everyone in as best we could, as quickly and as efficient as possible. The overwhelming feeling from the community is still palpable. Everyone, they had no problem standing outside in that heat. They wanted their vaccine. They were so happy that we were able to get to them and provide that vaccine. So we knew that our team was, we were heading in the right direction, providing that. While we were going into our factory settings, we thought of it almost as a SWAT team style. So I would typically go out and scout the particular needs of the site, and our team would modify the delivery based on space that they had available and the amount of people that they had that still needed their vaccine. The picture in the top corner there, that is from our General Dynamics clinic, and it was a typical clinic style kind of, that's what the Bruce model looks like. So instead of people going to the vaccination tables, we had all of the clients sit in their own pods, and then our vaccinators would take a card and would go around to them. So they stayed in one spot. The drive-through clinics were great success. Really, people enjoyed the fact that they did not have to get out of their vehicle. We were able to do full families at the same time, and no one had to get separated, which was great. So throughout the summer, so these are the months of June, July, August, and September of 2021. Our MLPS vaccine initiative was able to host a total of 42 clinics. And with that, we administered 3,836 vaccines. Again, focusing on ages 18 up with only the Moderna vaccine. We saw a lot of second doses, but we were still seeing those first doses in there. September, as we got into September, you can see on the chart there was a drastic decline in the need, which is a good thing. People are getting their vaccines. So at that time, our team decided that we were going to stand down with our mobile clinics. November 27th, the MLPS Vaccine Initiative was honored to receive the Warden, the 2021 Honor Roll recognition as a part of the COVID response team. With that, this was the start of the Omicron variant, and we were starting to learn more and more. And our team, though still not engaged just yet, we were starting to think that there might be the possibility and preparing for the potential impact of what Omicron would bring. Late December 2021, our MLPS vaccine initiative was re-engaged to support the third dose vaccines throughout the Omicron variant wave. Immediately, this round was significantly different than our summer initiative. With the COVID stressors, we knew that we weren't able to engage our frontline staff. So we set out and we went through a recruitment process, and we were able to successfully hire 26 team members. These fantastic team members included recently retired paramedics, nurses, current students in the paramedic and nursing program, as well as the business administration program, and also various eager members of the community. Very, very fantastic team. The recruitment process went quite quickly. We were very efficient in that we knew that we needed to get the team up and running. This was also during the Christmas break, so we really appreciated everyone's time and support with that. This next round, it was going to be more complicated because we're going to offer all of the vaccines. So initially in the summertime was strictly Moderna 18 and up. Now we were gearing our clinics for ages 5+. We had access to Moderna, adult Pfizer, as well as pediatric Pfizer. So 3 different vaccines, but those were 4 different doses. First dose, second dose, third dose. Third doses were different doses in the syringes, so it complicated things a little bit. Again, continued support from all of our fantastic allied agencies, including everyone in this forum right now. The County of Middlesex, the CAOs, again, the municipalities. While setting up the meetings, it was, where do you want, when do you want to go? And we'll make sure that we get everything we need, which was fantastic. I don't think I'll ever be able to say enough about the fantastic SERVE volunteers. I see a lot of familiar faces in this meeting that volunteered their time with Bettina's fantastic group. So we were so grateful for their support throughout these mobile clinics. So as mentioned, we had multiple different vaccines, we had multiple different doses, we had a new crew of vaccine team, and we had fantastic volunteers that were changing multiple times throughout the clinic. So in order to keep things organized and as efficient as possible, I developed a card system for all of our vaccines. I'm sure these look very familiar for a lot of people, but every vaccine was identified and arranged or assigned a color. So typically how we had all of the vaccinators at a table, and they would have a Moderna booster available. If they required anything different, they would hold up their green sign to get a full dose Moderna, a yellow sign for a pediatric ages 5 to 11, and then our adult Pfizers were pink. So with this, if we saw a vaccinator that identified a need, we would have a runner go and bring the specific vaccine to the table. We would cover the vaccine that was on the table, they were administered, and then we would continue on. So this kept that constant flow of the clinic without having to worry about only having pediatric Pfizers going to a specific table and slowing things down that way. Throughout our clinics, we typically had approximately 5 vaccinators. Since there was such a great demand, we wanted to make sure that we had as many people available as possible and make sure that we were still meeting the required capacity limits. We were still doing the screening. It was nice with the third doses, people only had to wait 5 minutes instead of the 20. So we were able to get people in and out quite quickly. Our first clinic of 2022 was in Dorchester at the Flight Exec Community Center. And I believe that was a Sunday, and we were able to administer 408 doses of COVID vaccine that day, which was fantastic. Again, throughout all of our clinics, we made sure that we were meeting the needs of the people. So if people had mobility issues, wherever we were, we would bring the vaccine out to the parking lot. If we had high anxiety, families that wanted to stick together, we utilized our ESU bus outside the community center of the site, again, just to make sure that everyone felt supported. So a very ambitious schedule was formed very quickly. Between February and March, our staff were able to offer 25 mobile clinics, focusing on community clinics throughout Middlesex and London. We also offered 2 community cultural clinics for the Muslim community held at the Muslim Mosque, and also the Bhutanese community. With our community cultural clinics, we had interpreters on site, we had appropriate language materials that were translated, we had our Arabic signs, and both of those clinics were a huge success. Just a few pictures. Again, our drive-through clinics, Fire Hall, I believe that is in Glencoe, and also our Curwood clinic with our walk-up. It was truly amazing how people were willing to waste their time to get their doses in. With our children ages 5 to 11 throughout throughout February and end of January, we were able to administer a total of 360 doses to those peds, which was fantastic. And just to give you a little bit of a glimpse of the statistics that we saw, you can see the dose 1, 2, 3, and 4 represented in the below chart. Throughout the months, we still thought it was fascinating how many first doses we were seeing so late January and February. You can note 305 in January and 74 in February. These weren't just our pediatric first doses, these were still the adults, so ages 16 and up. There was a significant number, which was fantastic. So combination of both of our clinics, I remember having a conversation with Gordon Warwick and Councillor Burkhart Justin that we were really hoping to hit our 8,000 mark. And by the end of, or early March, we hit a total of 8,033 vaccines that were administered by our mighty but little crew. We were so happy with that. 72 clinics. That meant that we administered 997 first doses, 3,422 second doses, 3,536 third doses, and 76 fourth doses total. On February 25th, our staff had the honor of meeting Premier Doug Ford. He came to our site. It was fantastic. He thanked us for our COVID response and our efforts. It was just a really fantastic opportunity for all of our staff. With that, if there is any questions that anyone has with regards to our COVID vaccine clinic initiative, I would be happy to answer that.
Okay, well, thank you for that presentation, Miranda. I must say, the clinics were organized extremely well, so kudos to you. And also your tactful handling of the residents that were getting vaccinated, because not everybody, as we saw, enjoys being vaccinated, but somehow everything got done, and your team did a fantastic job. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Miranda? See, Councillor DeVete, go ahead.
Thank you. You were just starting down the track, same track that I have. I just want to congratulate you, Miranda, and the team, and note that your ability to pivot and to change and to respond to all of the various scenarios, locations, the populations. Having this service available to people made it really easy, and I think it makes a huge difference when people really see how hard everyone's working to make sure that they have a chance to get the shot too. And speaking of hard situations, I know in Ilderton, some of the people who were coming in wanted A, but only were allowed to have B. And as the warden noted, your ability to deal with members of the public in a tactful way and make them feel comfortable, it's appreciated. So I just want to say congratulations to you and your team. You made it look easy, and I want to just say that that's evidence of really good planning and hard work. And on behalf of all the people that live in our community, I know I heard great things about their experience there at the clinic, and that they were appreciative of the service that they got. And it just thank you. So I don't know where we be without you. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for those kind words.
Councillor Burghardt-Jessen, and then Councillor Mayhew.
Thank you. And through the warden, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because Councillor DeVete and the warden have said a number of the things that I wanted to communicate. I don't think it's any secret how proud I am of this initiative. But I think the bigger message, and Councillor DeVete kind of, she stepped on it a little bit when she said about your ability to pivot. And I guess I you know, as we move out of this situation, we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what sort of crisis we'll be asked to respond to in the future. And I think it should give, you know, our residents, our council, you know, and even the City of London's council, a lot of comfort in knowing how well your team, Miranda, was able to get this up and running and respond as quickly as you did. And as I say, who knows what the future holds? Who knows what we'll be asked to do? And I have no doubt that at the next turn, that your team will be there to serve as you have. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Councillor Mayhew.
Thank you very much, Madam Warden. Miranda, first, congratulations, and then a question. On behalf of Southwest Middlesex, I thank you very much for coming to our fire hall and making our community that much more healthy. Miranda, following the shots, there's that waiting period of time. And I'm just wondering, you know, it's not a breach of confidentiality, I hope, but like, were there occasions, is it commonplace that you would have people with a concern following their vaccination? Was it few and far between, or is it something that your team came to expect at a clinic?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Mayhew. Very few and far between, knock on everything possible right now. With our concerns, typically we would be most on alert for those first doses. People with very specific allergies came prepared to the clinics, and if there was any question or doubt whether they were in the middle of a cancer treatment or possible underlying allergy that they were a little unsure about, there were a few times that we did make care plans with. So one in particular, I believe it was actually in your region, Councillor Mayhew. We had an individual who wasn't sure she had a plethora of allergies. And we said, you know, there were a couple that were kind of sitting with us a little bit. And we said, you know, if you have a good relationship with your physician, typically the follow-up is with the allergist to get that okay, and then come back and we'll be more than happy to vaccinate with the vaccine. And she actually did that, and she came back more confident knowing that she had followed the care plan provided by her team, and we administered and there was no issue. So we do, as we see so many people, we still take every individual at that time and we go through the entire process, starting over every single time with each person.
Well, that's great. And thank you again. Thank you, Madam Warden.
Thank you.
Councillor Vanderheyden.
Yes, thank you. Through the warden. Thank you, Miranda. Great report, and ditto to what everybody else has said. At the one point where you thanked the volunteers are so important to our communities. Absolutely. but you don't have to thank us as volunteers because I don't know about everybody else, but when I finally got to go out and talk to citizens, because we know we've had 2 years of trying to figure out how to connect with people, it actually was cathartic for myself. And I think I could probably talk for some of the counselors that were volunteers as well, to be able to work with our public in that way. And it felt like we were giving, and yet they were giving back to us as much by just having conversations. So, you know, it's a big circle, and mental health for all of us is really important, but that helped me get through some of this. So thank you.
Mr. Rayburn, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that we've all talked a little bit about the citizen impact of the work that the team's been doing, but I hear a lot, and I don't know how much it filters down to council, both at the provincial level, local level, city level, county level. We hear a lot from businesses about the impact that your work had, Miranda, just on the getting to those businesses, keeping the economy running in a very difficult time. I don't know how evident that is to council. I know I've talked to some City of London councillors that understand just how important that was to keep those large businesses running without having to have their shift workers leave and go off to take a day to go and get vaccinated. It was really important to the economy. So we hear, I don't always pass those along to council or to you, Miranda, but so much of what I hear is the impact that we were able to have on the economy. And so I wanted to add that to the team. Congratulations, because you really did have a positive impact on the local economy, regional economy.
Councillor Ropp, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Warden. Miranda, I absolutely enjoyed the days that we spent with you, and I'm sure everyone else did. Just the professionalism of all of the people you had there, yourself, your team. But I think to Bill's point, I know that we had several local businesses that let their people go to the clinics, and that's a point well made. The people really appreciate, even the ones standing in that hot day, standing in line for an hour or more, no complaints. Everybody was just so happy to have it come out to the community. So once again, as everybody said, well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ropp.
I don't see any other comments out there, but again, thanks, Miranda, for that presentation. It was very well done.
Thank you so much, Warden, and thank you again to everyone.
All right, so now we're going to move on to, we need to have a motion to receive that update for information. So looking for Councillor Ropp, seconded by Councillor Mayhew. Anyone against? No, okay. And now we're moving on to 8B, which is a vehicle purchase. The CEO, Carly's, and that would be a report from Mr. Trainee, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Warden. This is to address the current lease that is coming to term for the former CAO vehicle, which is an Acura RDX that has come into ownership of the County of Middlesex in July of 2020 and due to come off lease at the end of this month. So initially the lease was signed with Acura of Hamilton for a total value of just over $51,000. As part of that lease, the county traded in a former vehicle that was also owned by the county of a value of about $20,500, bringing the lease costs over the term of the agreement to about $27,240. We have an option at this point to purchase the vehicle at the end of the term of the lease for $27,156.60 plus $596 in transfer fees. And in reviewing the value of this vehicle in the open market, it's my estimation we're seeing the sales of this type of vehicle go for around $45,000. Currently, I am the one using this vehicle primarily. I put about 20,000 kilometers a year on this vehicle. And as COVID restrictions start to lift, I imagine that that number will likely continue to increase as travel becomes sort of more commonplace as we move out of COVID, have more in-person public meetings, and continue to travel for education and conference events. So I'm recommending that we purchase this vehicle at the end of the lease. It be added into the County of Middlesex fleet, and we'll address where this vehicle remains within the fleet in the next 5-year equipment replacement guide, which will be presented to council late summer of this year. And my early recommendation of that report, although that, council will of course have an opportunity to comment and review, is that this vehicle will likely just stay in the fleet for an extended period of time until such a point when we need to change the type or use of this vehicle in the future. So my recommendation is that the 2019 Acura RDX be purchased off the lease for a total cost of $27,752.60. And happy to answer any questions about the report.
All right, Council, any questions regarding that? Councillor Robb?
Thank you. Through the warden, mine isn't as much of a question. I talked with Chris last night about this on different options and how different options would look. Certainly, this is not a vehicle that uses as much fuel as what a pickup truck would or anything like that. But I guess I would support this motion. But I also mentioned to Chris about options down the road, about natural gas in some of our vehicles and the challenges, and electric vehicles in the future when we get, I think, in another generation of those. And so I would support this motion, but I'm wondering if on the heels of this, at some point we get a report, Chris, as what costs or the feasibility to go to natural gas in some of our plow trucks or that kind of thing, just as part of it. But I would support this motion, but I am wondering if we could get a report, something like that.
All right, so I guess you're making the motion, Councillor Robb. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cornelissen, and any comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, anyone against? So moved, thank you. And now moving on to 8C, 2022 tax rates. So the report from Cindy Howard. Cindy, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, and through the warden. In front of council today is a report for the 2022 tax ratios. Council is required to approve the tax ratios each year. I shared the tax policy background and recommendation with the local treasurers. As we discussed during the budget, the Ontario government postponed the 2020 impact assessment update. Therefore, the 2016 current value assessment totals will continue to be used to calculate property taxes for 2022 and 2023. This means the property assessment for the 2022 and property tax year will be the same as the 2021 tax year, unless there has been changes to the properties. The optional small business class and small scale on farm business subclass are not being recommended at this time. To date, only the City of Toronto and Ottawa have implemented a small business property subclass. The small scale on farm business subclass would only benefit a small group of properties, 6 in the county. Table 1 in the report shows the county levy by property tax class. So the majority of the levy distributions over among classes have remained fairly flat. Maintaining tax ratios at the 2021 level keeps the share of the tax burden borne by each property class consistent. For example, in 2022, with a budget increase of 0, this will mean that the tax rates are the same as 2021. And so, for example, the residential is 0.00397792. In 2022, we did see an increase in revenue growth, and we do expect to see this increase to continue in 2023 and hopefully beyond, with all the new homes we see being built in the county. The local treasurers meet quarterly, and in 2021, conversations included assessment growth and best practices. At this time, I'm recommending that the tax ratios remain the same as 2021. The tax ratios are listed in the report. I'm also recommending that the tax ratio bylaw be forwarded to County Council for approval. Thanks, and always happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Cindy. And I'm looking on the screen. Any questions for Cindy regarding this? Don't see anything. So we have a motion on the floor. Looking for a mover. Councillor Mayhew, seconded by Councillor Brennan. Anyone against? Seeing none, so that's moved. Thank you. And now moving on to counselors' comments and other business. So 9A is the FCM 2022-2023 Board of Directors nomination, and that would be regarding Councillor Vanderheyden. Do you want to speak to this, or is it just okay? I think, is there any questions about that? Yeah, Councillor Rob.
Thank you. It's just through the warden, it's just a general question. Is there a time limit on how long a person can serve on the board of FCM, or is it just an open? And I mean, I'm in support of this. I'm just wondering.
Through the warden, if you wish, I could answer the question.
Sure.
There is no time limit on how many times you can run for the Ontario caucus or serve on committees. There is a time limit for the time that you can serve on the table officers. And that's a 5-year span. And so when I'm done in June, so they will continue to pay for my expenses till June. And then the next year, if they send me somewhere, they pay. But if I'm just going for meetings, then the county would cover my expenses. And that would be till next June, which then I'm off the table officers. And then I think it would be good for council to decide whether they want me to continue to work on the caucus or if somebody else would like to have an opportunity to work on a caucus.
Thank you, Joanne.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions? Looking for a mover then? Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor DeVitt. Anyone? I'm going to call the vote. Anyone against? Seeing none, moving on now to bylaws. So bylaws, we have 7155, a bylaw to adopt the 2022 budget of the County of Middlesex. 7156, a bylaw to provide the remuneration payable to the warden. 7157, a bylaw to provide for remuneration and expenses, including convention expenses payable to members of council. 7158 is a bylaw to adopt tax rates and the payment schedule for the 2022 county levy. 7159 is a bylaw to confirm proceedings of the March 22nd, 22 meeting of council. Okay. Looking for a mover for the first and second reading. Councillor Richards, seconded. Councillor Brennan, anyone against? Okay, now moving on to the third and final reading, looking for a mover. Councillor DeVitt, seconded by Councillor Elliott. And I'm going to call the vote. Anyone against? So moved. Now we're moving into the committee of the whole. So I'm looking, the time is now 1:43. So I'm looking for a mover for that. Councillor Vanderheyden, seconded by Councillor Corneliuson. Thank you very much. Anyone against that? No? Okay, good. Now we're moving on to 11A1, which is the Middlesex Clean Water Program Update. And we have a presentation by Craig Merkley, Titania Lozier, and Michael Funk from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. And before I turn you loose, Craig, I just want to say, I have a note here that says this is your last presentation to the County Council as you're retiring. So I want to thank you for your efforts over the years on the Clean Water Project and other stewardship initiatives in the Middlesex County. Well, I know that we all wish you best in your retirement. And whenever you're ready, you can start your presentation. I feel like
Maybe he got an early
there we
start,
go.
Warden.
I think I was going to say, I hope he's not retired already.
There's Craig.
Here we go.
Can you hear me at all?
Yes, yeah, I think you
Yeah,
were frozen,
perfect.
Craig, for a while.
Okay, have you got me now?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay. I am so glad I'm retiring so I don't have to do these Zoom presentations anymore.
Well,
Stress is
yeah,
too much.
yeah.
But anyway, thank you for your well wishes. I still intend to be around in some capacity, especially to maybe play hockey on Wednesday nights to keep Chris Trainey in his place there. But we'll carry on here. Thank you for the opportunity to present. As has been mentioned, I've been coming down to give these presentations for a while now. I think the Middlesex CWP started up in 2001. So we've done an awful lot of good work over the years, and we hope to continue doing that in the future. I think we've done at least over 4,000 projects from the various categories in the clean water program. So it's a lot of work has been accomplished, and I think that's a credit to the municipalities who participate in this program. The next slide, please. Can that be forwarded, or is that my job?
I think you might just be frozen a little bit, Craig. Maybe try turning your video off and going without the video.
Okay.
And that might help with your bandwidth, but it's moving at our end. It's on the Thorndale demonstration farm. Yeah.
Okay, well, in that case, if you can back up one slide where it says technical and financial.
I'm just going to turn your video off to see if it helps.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, well, if you're, we're bouncing around all over the place here. There, okay, the slide I have is the, well, okay, I'm going to assume you're on the slide that says the technical and financial support.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, I'm not, but I will try and remember what I wrote. The program has three main components. The first one is the technical and financial support. And then, but the big one I wanted to talk about today was actually the, oh, there we are, in addition to the research and demonstration of the best management practices. But marketing and education is a key component to it. And I always try and give you a little bit of new information or something to look at these presentations. And in the past, I've certainly covered some of the individual projects, but I just wanted to touch on the extension work here, the information transfer part of the component of the clean water program. So if you can advance to the next slide, to the clean water, to the Thorndale demonstration slide, I'd appreciate it. Let me know when you've advanced and I'll try and remember what it looks like.
Yeah, it's moved.
You're on? Okay. Again, as part of the program, we try and get the information, the lessons learned through the program, the research and demonstration part of it out to the farming public and beyond. And we had a great opportunity to do that this year through this event we called the Thorndale Demonstration Farm. And I just wanted to elaborate that on a little bit because it's a pretty unique thing to have in Middlesex County. Over the years, we've done an awful lot of things. We've looked at a lot of research, we've seen what works and seen what doesn't, and we had the opportunity to implement all of these different practices on one spot and one site, on one farm, at the Thorndale Curve there, if you know that road. The farm is owned by the Upper Thames, so it was a great opportunity to utilize that site and do this type of a project. So we implemented as many BMPs as we possibly could on one farm. And some unique ones as well that were experimental in nature, looking forward to setting up for the future as far as research and demonstration goes. And as that slide shows there, you can see on the left side, there's a free drain component and a controlled drainage component. And this is one of the unique features of the property that controlled drainage, as you can see in the upper left-hand slide there, is one of the controlled drainage units being installed on the property, controls the amount of water that is held back through the tile system and then released slowly over time. And you can see those dots represent the number of those units that we put in. So we were holding the water back on the one side and then letting it go on the other side. And then there's two separate outlets that we can actually sort of monitor that from a water quality standpoint and look at how that is impacting from a water quality standpoint. And part of the project as well is working with the cooperator who runs the farm and look at the economic component of that, see if it makes a difference from a yield standpoint. So that was a big part of the demonstration that we have on that farm, but there was a whole pile of other things as well, but they're all geared to look at soil health, biodiversity, water quality, and of course I've mentioned productivity, but a key thing as well is the issue of climate change and mitigating that. You can go to the next slide. And I'm trying to remember what that is because you're looking at it and I'm not, but oh, there we go. These are some of the features that specific features that are on the property. So we had the opportunity to put in some erosion control structures, different types, broad-based berms, narrow-based berms, different types of surface inlets. So not only standpipes, but French drain type of things called that take the water away slowly through stones. We looked at different windbreaks. We planted windbreaks. We've done block plantings, and a big part of it as well is doing the woody fence row management of those windbreaks, because that is important. We don't want it creeping out into the field. We want to show growers that you can have these things in concert with growing crops on the farm and adding that diversity and the things associated with windbreaks. Cover crops and rotation, the whole field management component is there as well. And again, we're setting it up for some research for future years that we have good relationships with folks at the university to do that. And so there's a great opportunity to do that right around the corner and then demonstrate that again to the farming public and try and get those lessons learned out there. Next slide, please. So as part of this year's opening, I guess you'd say, of this site, that we held a couple of demonstration days out there. The first one being in June, when we actually demonstrated the installation of the tile. Ken McCutcheon and the Van Gorp operation installed the tile. You can sort of see on the map there on the kiosk where it was. The blue is the control drainage, the green is the free drain. And we worked with a number of other partners from industry and also organizations such as LICO to make this happen. We were fortunate enough through the Clean Water Program to lever money, some significant funding from Environment Canada and also from OMAFRA through their COA program. So the combination of all of that gave us the proper funding that we could do this right and set it up for the future. And so that's what we did. So the next slide there is, if you can move forward there. We did again had a demonstration day in June, which was well attended, and then we decided to do another one in the fall in November. I guess the snow has started to come down, and that one was very well attended as well. And we were lucky enough that we had good representation that day, as well from some of the local politicians, federal and provincial politicians as well. And getting the information out, Kelly of course tweeted information out as to the value she saw in the demonstration day. And I believe, yes, Kathy Burkhart Jansen was out and represented the county, and I made her stand there and freeze while I explained to her the function of an automatic water sampler. I'm sure she remembers it all, but it was good to see everybody out, and I think it's a very worthwhile project. And again, we were able to pull the whole thing off because of the existence of our local clean water program. So that's an information transfer piece that I wanted to let you know about that happened through the program this year, and we look forward to that site evolving over time and using it for lessons learned in the future, and continue to work with the local municipalities and the farming public for it. Go to the next slide. I think I'll jump into the actual update of the Clean Water Program numbers and where we stand this year. Okay, there we go. So as far as the summary, I was asked to give a bit of a summary of as to where things stood. And again, we had a $30,000 contribution from Middlesex County, and these are the numbers of projects that were approved. 41 projects were approved and completed. This represented about over $56,000 in grants allocated. So although there was $30,000 contribution, again, we're able to use that money to lever money from other programs, foundations, things like that, and get that into the clean water program, and then turn it over to landowners from there. And that's sort of the amount of economic activity that is generated by doing those 41 projects. Pretty close to $200,000 worth of work done in the county as a result of just those 41 projects. And again, each project is applied for and reviewed by our local review committee. They're not all accepted. Some of them are rejected for certain reasons. And Mark Brown, of course, is the county representative on our committee. So we can go to the next slide. Trying to remember what it is so I can just start talking, but I can't.
It's about tree planting and erosion control and uptake.
Oh, okay. Yes. I just, again, just some observations about it that I'm always asked, so where is the uptake? And where it is, where we notice the most uptake has been in structural erosion control on farmland, but also tree planting. We had an awful lot of applications for planting trees in the county, which was great to see. And if you can roll to the next slide, I guess I'll just give it's just an observation that I thought I'd just throw up there because it's something that I don't know if it's an issue or not, but it's an observation that we do see when you're out and around. You see certain things on the landscape, and it's for me it's a concern, but it's just an observation. But I see a number of the large sort of mature windbreaks coming down now and clearing for bigger fields. So it's kind of disturbing to see, but it's just an observation. I just wanted to make you aware of some of the things that we see out there. But I guess the positive side of that is that through the program, we're seeing an awful lot of trees going in the ground as well. You can go to the last slide. I think I'll just use this slide as a transition. I mentioned that I won't be around so much anymore, but we definitely have capable people in the wings. That Tatiana, who is on the call, and Mike Funk, whose smiling faces there, are poised to take over some of the workload that I've been doing over the years with the Clean Water Program, and they are more than capable of doing it. I think Mike has been in front of you in the past, giving updates on Middlesex. Wrong slide. There, okay. We'll go straight to Mike and Tatiana. That they are more than capable of carrying on, and that they're both graduates from the master's program at the University of Waterloo, and I just wanted to get their faces in front of you before I signed off here. But just let me I'll try and go back to that last slide because it's actually kind of important. It's the issue of climate change is out there, and we are seeing the evidence of it. I see it with local extreme weather. We see an awful lot of when the water comes down, it comes down in a hurry. It's very isolated, and there's a lot of it. And the impact is seen through some of the erosion work that we deal with in the county. And you can see the damaging effects of it there. Now, I know some of the other municipalities they're all dealing with climate change issues through their local municipalities, and some are talking about sort of utilizing the local clean water program as a vehicle to perhaps deal with some of these issues. So I just wanted to throw it up there as an opportunity that it's there. It's a network that's working, and it's worth maybe talking about that in the future. Can it be utilized to deal with some of the issues of climate change locally? That was the intent of that slide. So I'm sorry that we've jumped around here. My connection here is terrible, but I'll sign off there and I'll answer any questions that you have at this time.
All right, so first of all, Craig, thanks again for that presentation, and it's really nice to see the succession plan in place. It's always good to see new people coming up and moving through the ranks. I also want to say I do think one thing that always impresses me about our conservation authorities is how they are able to leverage monies that are sent to them from the municipalities. They use them, they leverage, they get funding, and they're constantly looking for grant opportunities, and they're very creative. So kudos to you and your team for all of the work you do with the money that you get. So any other questions for Craig or comments? Councillor Mayhew.
Thank you very much, Madam Warden. Craig, I enjoyed that discussion very much, and I'm glad you touched on the change of the climate. As mayor of Southwest Middlesex, I've experienced 2 rainfalls that exceeded 3.5 inches, and one of those was nearly 5 inches, in which it was necessary for me to declare a state of emergency because of the condition of gravel roads. And of course, during those times, stormwater management is challenged during these extreme weather events, and sanitary capacity is stretched during the events as well. These rainfalls were once described as a rainfall once in 10 years, but they seem to be falling biannually now. And the quality of the water in the lower Thames, in my region, is very much dependent on what goes on in the upper Thames. And I have been concerned about the discharge going into the river, the Thames River particularly, during these extreme weather events by the City of London. I'm sure you're aware of that, but it does have an adverse effect on the quality of the water downstream. Is this on your radar and in your line of sights? And are any remediating factors being done to address this abundance of water that falls during these rains and the quality of the Thames?
Yeah, I don't know if you can still hear me or not, but
Yep.
it's your comment is a good one. I wish I had some statistics at my fingertips, but I could get them for you, and it might be good, an interesting presentation for you in the future, comparing the rural contribution to the urban contribution. There has been some study done on that, some intensive study, and they're finding from a phosphorus standpoint, I think the city produces about 13% of the phosphorus that outlets at the mouth of the Thames River. So it's surprisingly lower, that the bulk of nutrients are from farmland, if you call a spade, that when you look at your extreme events that you saw, it's frightening the amount of soil that comes off of the land and the damage it does. And with that soil carrying the nutrient loads into the river and straight out to the mouth is quite something. And of course, once those nutrients are in the system, and then if it's during the warm season when the temperature triggers the phosphorus and nitrates reaction into algae, it goes from there. So it's quite something, but it's not the levels coming from the urban area are not as high in relation to the whole outlet as you might think. Intuitively, you think it might be, but it's not. But it might be worth in the future a presentation to council about that specific issue, because I think it's something that decision makers should know about. I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay, any other questions for Craig? Seeing none. Thank you again for coming forward again, Craig, to present this, and we'll look forward to Tanya and Michael's presentations in the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, moving on to 11A 2, which is the politically correct LDD moth monitoring program. So I think Mark is going to bring that forward.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to councillors. Thank you very much for this opportunity to report back on one of the initiatives that was raised last August at our LDD moth update to council. As you recall, at the August meeting, staff reported back to council on our monitoring program and various other initiatives. And staff were asked by council to develop a good neighbour policy, which we have done, and we've reported back to council. But I think also, if my memory serves me correctly, at that council meeting, I think Councillor DeVete asked me or staff to investigate the possibility of bulk buying pheromone traps that could be distributed out to residents to help with the sort of the moth trapping male moths during the season, to get a few of these male moths off the street and stop eggs being fertilized and that sort of thing. So I'm pleased to report back to you today on that second item. So in the course of events since that meeting, I've had discussions with really the go-to people in terms of moth trapping and insect monitoring, who are obviously our federal partners, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And as part of that, talking to them, sorry, Chris, you can pretty much just scroll through my slides slowly. I don't have much to say, so I'm going to move through this quite quickly. So yeah, as part of that conversation, it was a very interesting conversation, but I was asking colleagues at CFIA where they source their traps from and what would be the best trap to circulate out to residents and to trap moths in the county. And our conversation, I think, went in a very happy direction in terms of I'm always looking at how can we add value to these programs and add value both to residents, to the county, and to our federal partners. And in the course of that, we came up with this, what I think is quite a unique and exciting program, which is based on citizen science, but it also gets moth traps out to residents and to land managers. And I think it'll be the start of invasive species monitoring as we have not seen it in the county, and I think it's quite unique. So I'm excited to introduce now to you a representative from our federal government partners, which is the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And I promised myself I would not pronounce Nicole's surname, but I'm going to give it a crack. And I think I'd like to introduce Nicole Mielewczyk from the CFIA.
Thank you, Mark. And I must say you did do very well with the pronunciation of my last name. I do have a presentation as well. So if you're able to load that up, and I can present through the warden to the council on this LDD moth monitoring program for Middlesex County. Perfect, thank you. So as Mark mentioned, my name is Nicole Mielewczyk with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. I am the Ontario Plant Health Survey Biologist, and today I can give you an overview of our proposed program for spongy moth monitoring within Middlesex County. So you can proceed to the next slide. So the basic overview of the program involves the purchasing of about 200 spongy moth traps, give or take, depending on what the budget allows, from the Canadian distributor Salida Inc. This is the distributor that we use to purchase our spongy moth traps for monitoring with our annual program. The county, specifically Mark, would work with myself to identify key areas and neighborhoods within Middlesex County to target that are at high risk for introduction of additional species, as well as areas that you have noted have high populations of spongy moth. We would then engage and encourage county members to be a part of this exciting citizen science initiative. I'll go through this in the next few slides, but there are a number of ways in which I'll be able to support this, spanning from outreach and education materials, all the way to coming on site, should COVID allow, to actually lead some information sessions and teach community members how to set up these traps and monitor for spongy moth. As well, if the county is able to record the number of trap catches and send these to the CFIA, we'll be able to combine your data with our annual report, and then we'd be able to create a report for community members to actually see what their good work has done. So you can move on to the next slide. And this is where I get into the real nitty gritty of what monitoring for LDD moth actually entails. So traps would have to be set up by June 15th. That's when the adult moth flight period typically begins, give or take, depending on weather, of course. With trap setup, it is quite simple. We have an image of the trap type that you would be using. It's called very correctly a milk carton trap, very simply named. The most important thing with trap setup is remembering to map the location with GPS coordinates. This is something that RGIS analysts will need and able to create a very accurate map to display in our annual report. Then there would be trap checks around late July. With trap checks, all that has to happen is you untie the trap from the tree, pop open the top, and count the number of moths within. In information sessions that I'll be able to deliver, I can give the community some identification features so that they are able to positively identify as LDD moth. Our lab may also have the capacity to analyze a subset of the traps to determine if the Asian subspecies, which we have not detected in Ontario, has actually been introduced. So to determine which traps would be best for this analysis, I'd work with Mark Brown on where the highest imports in the county are and the greatest risk for introduction. So as I mentioned, trap checks would just be once in late July, quite simple, just counting the number of moths and recording those. And then trap collection would begin around September 15th. This is typically when the flight period ends. And again, it would be counting and collecting any specimens. The traps that we had discussed would be analyzed for the Asian subspecies. They would be collected and sent to the CFIA. Luckily, I actually do live quite close to Middlesex County, so I'd be able to arrange a pickup time to pass those on to my lab. And then to ensure that your data is compiled in our annual report and we're able to develop a report for your community, the data that you've collected would have to be sent to us by October 12th. We'd be able to provide you with a template spreadsheet, so it's very easy to compile this data. You can move on to the next slide. So very specifically, how I'll be able to support this initiative and the community throughout this program, as I mentioned, through education and outreach materials. We have various Pest Id Cards. We actually have quite a few in stock, so it'd be very possible to pass these on to all the community members. They have very great images of the various life stages so that members are able to keep an eye out at all times for these moths, as well as for the Asian subspecies that I was mentioning earlier. Unfortunately, you cannot tell them apart from the European subspecies based on morphological identification, although the egg masses are typically a little differently shaped. So we'd be able to pass on education outreach materials like that. I'd also be able to put on an information session for the community, virtually, of course, but it would be nice to get out and meet members of your community who are interested in insect monitoring as well. I find it's a lot easier to engage with citizens then and answer any of the questions, because as we've seen today, there can be some technical difficulties with having Zoom meetings like this. I'd also be able to provide you with our external Lymantria dispar moth trapping protocol. This will ensure that the data that you collect is able to be compared and added to the data that we collect on an annual basis, which would then allow us to produce a report for your community to demonstrate the positive impacts of their efforts. And as I mentioned, we'd be able to analyze a subset of your traps for the presence of the Asian subspecies of Lymantria dispar. You can move on to the next slide. So in and of itself, this trapping program is a great initiative to get the community involved. But if you wanted to take it further, whether just within your districts or across the entire county, there are a few ways to do that. The first and pretty simple is to host a egg mass scraping contest or campaign. This is quite an impactful initiative, as egg masses can contain anywhere from 100 to 1,000 eggs. species. So even just one area of the county scraping off egg masses could make a huge impact. The Invasive Species Centre of Ontario actually had one of these campaigns last year, and they recorded over 100,000 egg masses scraped, which is pretty amazing. If you were to decide to do something like this, of course, I'd be able to support you throughout that, and again, provide any identification help when it comes to egg masses as well. And the next really exciting initiative, which the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is leading nationally, is the monitoring for an additional invasive species called box tree moth. It's very fortunate that the trap that you would be purchasing for spongy moth monitoring can also be used to monitor for box tree moth. This moth is native to China, Korea, and Japan, and in 2018 it was discovered in Toronto. However, over the past few years, it's been discovered in additional areas within the Golden Horseshoe. So we do have a lot of location data for that, but we are looking at how to define the regulated area for this invasive insect. And to do that, we need more location data. So if you're interested in using some of your traps to monitor for box tree moth, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency would be able to send some lures out so that you're able to participate in this monitoring effort as well. And we can move on to the next slide. So my final slide is just going over the positive impacts of community science. I think over the past few years, especially with COVID and the lack of human interaction that we've been able to have, it's been very evident how much the environment can positively impact our lives and how much the LDD moth populations can negatively impact our lives. So what are the positive impacts of community science? The first just being boosting invasive species awareness, collaboration across a few different agencies and partners like this one, for example, and increasing the amount of education activities and events that we're able to put on. Events like this and programs like this also help support strategic response that my agency, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, do have to roll out when it comes to huge populations like this. And it also enhances citizen engagement in plant health issues. I think what's really important is that it empowers community members to monitor and protect their environment. It gives them the information that they need to then go out into, woodlots in the county or even their backyard and be more aware of what healthy plants and trees look like and what to do when they identify an issue. And finally, although this is a bit of a lofty goal, this community science project can help contribute to the control and crash, or at least the reduction in population of a major plant pest within Ontario. So that's it for my presentation today. I want to thank you again for having me here, and I'm available to take any questions now if there are any.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Mark. I think you've hit it right on when you think about that community science piece, because that is one thing about the moths, is that people really felt quite helpless and not really sure how to they did their own research and tried to do their own thing, but when they feel that everybody's working together to get rid of the moth problem, I think that's a great thing. So I'm going to open up the floor for any questions from Council, and I see Councillor DeVitt. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Warden. Thanks to the presentation, Nicole. That was most enlightening. I'm curious, the box tree moth, what does it do?
So the box tree moth is a moth of boxwood plants. So not many people know what boxwood plants are. They're very typically used as hedges in botanical gardens or around some older properties. They are very, very popular in larger communities. And unfortunately, the box tree moth is a major defoliator of them. As I mentioned, it's only in the Golden Horseshoe area now, but we aren't quite sure of how fast it's spreading or how far it's reaching.
That's great. You learn something every time you go to Council. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Mayhew.
Thank you very much, Madam Warden, and thank you, Nicole and Mark as well. Extremely interesting. Nicole, Southwest Middlesex is host to one of the largest Carolinian forests in Middlesex County, in Ontario, I should say. And this was a very hot button topic in my municipality, very emotional at times as well. The destruction was not only visual, it was even audible. You could hear the crunching and the feces dropping from the forest canopy on your shoulders. It was a significant issue. And I certainly welcome your report. I can assure you that you would have a very engaged audience in Southwest Middlesex. Should you choose to bring your message to my municipality, we would love to have you, and you'll have my contact information through the county. Just as we are happy to live with, just as we're learning to live with COVID-19, we are going to have to learn to live with the gypsy moth. My question is, the winter had stretches of temperatures below -8, -9 degrees, some -13, -12 for extended periods of time, which may range from 3 days to 7 or 8 days. Does that help this issue going forward into the late summer of 2022, where the temperature is cold enough to mitigate this problem to some degree?
Thank you. That's a great question. And to answer it, unfortunately, that was not cold enough. We do have some partners with the Canadian Forest Services who have been doing some research on the cold tolerance of this type of moth. And I believe, although I do not have the report in front of me, that it takes temperatures as low as -25 to truly do damage to these egg masses. That unfortunately is why the LDD moth population has spread so far north in Ontario. So for the time being, I cannot say that this past winter will have any effect on the populations within Southern Ontario.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, for the warden. Nicole, just wondering, with the initiative with the traps that are put out, is the idea just to check them twice, so in late July and then at the beginning of September, or is it more frequent than that?
That's a great question. Thank you. It is as simple as checking them twice. So it really is an easy program to administer within a county, and I'd be able to send out an email reminder to Mark to encourage all the citizens to check their traps. If citizens are monitoring their traps a little more frequently than that and noticing that they are becoming fuller because we are in an infested area, we can adjust the plan accordingly. But our internal protocol and the external protocol I'll be able to share with you does state just 2 trap checks.
Okay, and if I could have a follow-up, the reason I was asking that is because I know that in certain areas in Middlesex County, it's people are checking them more often, because the issue with some of these traps is that there isn't enough room to really catch any more. And as a part of like a little show and tell, this is what I have for a moth trap, and I bought several of these, and I had to empty these out actually like every other day because it's this system. It's a water system where you have the water that goes up so far, and then the lures at the top. And if I didn't empty it out more than, every day or every other day, it was useless. There wasn't enough room. So I just didn't know if my concern is checking them only really twice. I don't think that's going to do it. I feel like they're going to be filled up.
That's a great concern. I must say, seeing your traps and knowing that you bought a few is very good to hear. The traps that we're suggesting you purchase are a little larger than that. It's the size of an average milk carton, and the entire milk carton would be available for moths to fly into. The way that they stick in there is through just a Mark, thank you. He's got an example there. It's just a sticky liner within, so you can see the entire milk carton is available for the LDD moths to fly into. Taking into account the population boom that we had last year, we may have to increase the trap checks. That's something that we can visit in early July, late June, perhaps.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Warden, I think.
Yeah. Any other questions? I was just thinking about how many moths. That was a great presentation. I don't see any other comments or questions. I think we're going to look forward to a summer of trapping moths and scraping egg masses. Sounds like a great contest for Canada Day. And
Thank you, Warden.
we'll move on from there. So thank you again. Now, a mover, sorry, to accept the Clean Water Program update and the moth monitoring program for information, please. Councillor DeVete, seconded by Councillor Burkhart-Jessen. Anyone against that? Nope, seeing none, we'll move on to the action items. So first is 11B1, police record checks and driver's abstract policy, HR policy 1-02. And I believe that's Jessica. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Warden. Before you today is the county's police record checks and driver's abstract policy. This policy has been updated and designed to provide a more robust policy, as the county has a responsibility to make every reasonable effort to ensure the safety and security of persons who are under the county's care, and to protect county assets and to comply with legislation. Persons who have a record of offenses may pose such a risk depending upon the position or volunteer function for which they are being considered or they currently hold within the county. The policy does set out a procedure for preconditions of employment for new employees, volunteers, and existing employees. The policy does set out a requirement for employees in designated positions to complete an annual declaration form declaring the current status of their criminal record. And the policy does also allow the county at its discretion to request from any employee in a designated position to provide a police record check upon request. Any questions on the policy, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, Councillor Corneliuson.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Jessica, I think it's a great idea to have those annual checks, but when I read through the report, it didn't indicate who would cover the costs of such a report.
Thank you, through you, Warden, to Councillor Cornelius. It is in the policy. If we are requesting it, we pay for it as the county. If it's for a precondition of employment, it is the cost is borne by the candidate.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions? No, seeing none. Thanks again, Jessica. And we have a motion here in front of us. Looking for a mover. Councillor Richard, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Anyone against? Seeing none, so moved. Thank you. Now we're moving on to 11B2, which is the Middlesex Joint Annual Accessibility Status Report, Accessibility Coordinator. And welcome, Sarah. I see you on the screen now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Warden and members of Council. I am the Accessibility Coordinator of Middlesex County. So the report that I have before you is on the Joint Annual Accessibility Status Report for the year of 2021. This was created between Middlesex County and its local municipal partners. Under the IASR, we have to report on our accomplishments regarding the Joint Multi-Year Accessibility Plan. So this is the report that discusses what we achieved in 2021. And since the plan is a joint effort, the report is also a joint effort, which also helps increase collaboration across the county with respects to accessibility. The status report outlines the continuous achievements in accessibility and highlights in 2021. All achievements and highlights are important in moving towards the goal of making Ontario fully accessible by 2025. Despite the ongoing challenges with the pandemic, the county and local municipal partners have made great accomplishments in 2021. Some of the projects and initiatives that were achieved include website updates that were made to meet the compliance requirements for the WCAG 2.0 Level AA web accessibility. The Middlesex Accessibility Advisory Committee reviewed several projects relating to accessibility. This committee is very significant in the consultation aspect, as well as including the voice of people with disabilities in many of the different projects that we take on across the county. Several local municipal partners received grant funding for accessibility that has allowed renovations and upgrades to take place regarding the built accessible environment. Some of these updates may include updating outdoor play spaces and equipment, updating community centers, sidewalk network, accessible washrooms, off-street parking, accessible doors, benches, and picnic tables across the county. One of the major projects that I actually got to be involved with and is an ongoing project at this point in time is the accessible playground project that is going to be installed in Dorchester. So that's a very exciting addition to that community. And several local municipal partners did do some further accessibility training in 2021 and revised documents to ensure the templates were in accessible format. This is also an ongoing initiative that will continue into 2022 for the county. That is pretty much it for the general updates. If you do refer back to the report, it has more details on what we achieved. So with that said, I am happy to answer any questions or take any feedback that anybody has on the status report.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And I just want to say before we go on to any other comments, I have had the pleasure of attending those meetings, and they're very informative and very inclusive. And congratulate you and Councillor Brennan for running a great meeting with lots of information for everyone. So having said that, is there any other comments or questions? Oh, I see. Councillor Brennan, go ahead. Councillor Brennan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Madam Warden, that Sarah is doing a fantastic job for the county. She's bringing a lot of initiatives and doing an awful lot of work in this area. So I'd just like to congratulate her on a great year and continued success in her job. And she's doing a great job for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, great, I would agree. I saw somebody else's hand up. Councillor Vanderheyden, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, through the warden. Always interesting to read this report. I remember when we started these committees and we're trying to move forward to the date of having everything accessible. And I really appreciate when you put in there the highlights from different communities on actual physical things that are accomplished. I see there's lots of plans, but I'm always a suspect of plans and, you know, policies and, you know, updating all those are important, but they don't really get, in my opinion, the job done. So I really like seeing the shovels in the ground, and when a corner is now totally accessible because there's a proper grade on the street level and all of that, because that's real life change that people need. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? All right, so I'm going to ask now, we have a motion here that the report be approved and forwarded. So I'm looking for a mover. Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Elliott. And anyone against? Oh, seeing none. And now we're going to move on to 11B3, the Middlesex County and Local Municipal Partners Joint Multi-Year Accessibility Plan. And again, Sarah, the floor is.
Thank you, Warden. So this report is with respect to the Joint Multi-Year Accessibility Plan spanning 2022 to 2027. This was also a collaborative effort between the Middlesex County and its local municipal partners. The plan is directly aligned with the AODA and IASR, and it provides information to the public on how we will meet the accessibility requirements over the next 5 years. The main aim is to identify, remove, and prevent barriers for people with disabilities. There are 3 new sections worth noting in this plan that I think help improve the clarity of the plan, which is the message from the chair of the Middlesex Accessibility Advisory Committee, the executive summary, and the accessible coordinator role. For the first 2, these really help to introduce the plan and give people an idea of what the plan will be about. And it shows support of the community as well as the committee. The accessibility coordinator role was actually something that was recommended to be added by Elgin County, who has a somewhat similar plan in place, because there was some confusion perhaps between what the role of the Middlesex Accessibility Advisory Committee is and what the role of the coordinator, which is my job, is. So I wanted to provide some clarity there to make sure people were aware of where to go if they had any concerns or questions with respect to accessibility. So I'm always happy to answer those. So the plan will require being reviewed every 5 years. However, changes may be made on an ongoing basis as needed. So some of the ongoing and upcoming accessibility goals for Middlesex County include monitoring the IASR changes. I'm not 100% sure when these will be rolled out, but I anticipate that there will be an introduction of 2 new standards at some point in the future. And I'm also hoping that's the case, given all the work that's being done on it. These 2 standards would be with respect to education and healthcare, which we very much need. So they may require some policy updates and revisions to the MYAP as well as training. There is also going to be updates to accessibility training, web and social media training, and provide department-specific training over the next year or so. So this will address some of the web compliance and ensure the accessibility of PDF and Word documents. This will also be done in addition to the creation of a design guide. There will be training provided to ensure that there is no accidental oversight when it comes to consultation with the Middlesex Accessibility Advisory Committee as well. And all the training will be documented. There will be changes made to ensure greater accessibility of the Middlesex County Connect transportation services. So I'm sure there will be updates provided on that at some point going forward, or maybe already has been. But I know there's some exciting changes that will be happening there that will make these services easier to access for riders. There will also be continued support provided to all local municipal partners with respect to their accessibility projects and initiatives. And the last thing is to monitor funding opportunities to continue supporting accessibility projects across the county. That is more or less it for the plan. I know it's a very long document, so if anybody has any questions or more or less if anyone has any feedback, I'm happy to take that. So yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Sarah. And that was a very comprehensive document. You are correct. I think it was quite a few pages and very interesting to read, actually. So again, I'm just going to open it up to see if there's any other comments or questions. Councillor Mayhew, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I have the privilege of sitting on that committee. Again, I reiterate John's words that she's doing an extremely capable job. Municipalities that can be defined as walkable are getting recognized as a good place to live for people with disabilities. And I can see it in my own municipality that we are home and host to several organizations whose clientele are those that have challenges. And it's in terms of the downtown cores, many of which county roads go through, there has to be a great collaboration between the municipality, the county, and the accessibility coordinator to make sure that these walkable communities who host these organizations have the attributes in terms of handicap parking and things of that nature that are so important. And I guess I'm urging you not to lose sight of the fact that there are some municipalities that are underserved for accessible benefits, and it's got to be addressed in some of the downtown cores that the county has actually in their strategies for moving forward in terms of economic development and planning that are looking at these downtown cores to revitalize. And that revitalization, a component of that has to be accessibility. And thank you, Sarah, for that. And I look forward to working with you in the future as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we do have a motion to approve this and forward it to our local municipal partners for approval. So looking for a mover. Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Mayhew. And I'm just going to ask if anyone's against that. Seeing none, or we're going to move on to our next, which is 11B4, tender for the supply installation of subdrains ME22 from Ryan Hillinger, who's been waiting patiently. Ryan, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Warden, through you to Council. This is for the supply and installation of subdrains on 2 of our county roads. And basically, AG Hayter was the low bid with $50,996. It's our recommendation that the bid be accepted.
Okay, any questions? No, looking for a mover? Councillor Robb, seconded by Councillor Richards. Anyone against? Seeing none, that's so moved. Thank you, Ryan. On to the next, which is the quotation for roadside weed spraying.
Thank you, Madam Warren. Through you to Council. This is a joint quotation from Middlesex County, Strathroy-Caradoc, Adelaide Metcalfe, and Middlesex Centre. The Middlesex County portion is $40,610, and the remaining portion to be split among the municipalities is $34,710. Greenstream is the low bid this year. We have worked with them in the past, and we recommend that the bid be accepted. And if anyone has any questions, I will gladly answer those.
Any questions? No. Seeing none, then I'm asking for a mover. Councillor Cornelissen, and seconded by Councillor Vanderheyden. And I'm going to call the vote. Anyone against? Seeing none. So carried. We're going to move now on to 11B6, Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative and Social Services Relief Funds. And that would be Cindy and Joe. So whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Warden, and through you to the Council. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time. The Community Homeless Prevention Initiative, or CHIPI, and the Social Services Relief Funds, SSRF, have been instrumental in providing much needed supports to our county's homelessness and risk of homelessness populations. The county received just over $1.4 million in phases 1 through 4 of the SSRF funds, along with the annual CHIPI funds of approximately $119,000. These funds were able to support many different services throughout the last 2 years during the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, the Whatever It Takes funds, supports to the food banks, the Middlesex Community Navigator, and help with rental and utility arrears. All of the current CHIPI funds for the 2021-2022 fiscal year have been spent. All the SSRF funds, phase 4, has been allocated. One of the SSRF Phase 4 programs is the Middlesex County Interim Accommodations pilot project. This project is to provide temporary shelter and community supports to individuals and families in need. To allow for continued support to our homeless individuals or families, we have partnered with the Canadian Mental Health Association, Thames Valley Addiction and Mental Health Services, the Community Navigator, and the Countryside Motel. 2 contracts have been created. The first is between the County of Middlesex and the Canadian Mental Health Association. This contract, if approved, will come into effect April 1st, 2022 for up to the next 6 months as funding allows. The total amount of the contract will be approximately $242,000. The contract lays out each organization's role for this program to ensure its success. The second contract is with the Countryside Motel. This contract, if approved, will also come into effect April 1st, 2022. The contract lays out the agreed upon terms of the use of the motel, for example, the room rates and the guarantee of room availability. We will have 9 rooms dedicated to this program and 1 room for office space. This office space allows community partners to meet with clients of the hotel and the program. Currently, all 9 rooms are full with a waiting list. We anticipate over the next 6 months that it will remain at full capacity. We are grateful to be able to continue this program as it provides much needed wraparound supports for our vulnerable populations. I'm recommending Council approve this report and the interim housing contracts as attached and authorize the General Manager of Finance and Community Services, Cindy Howard, to execute the agreements on behalf of the corporation. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Yeah, I see Councillor Vanderheyden with her hand up, so whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you to either Joe or to Cindy. First of all, thank you very much for these programs. They just really highlight, what we've been through the past 2 years and the people that are very vulnerable in our communities. This is something that helps, so I think it's awesome. I don't think it's the solution. It's a stopgap, in my opinion. It's a place for people to be. There's wraparound services, which is awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I know that the hotel and the mental health services have been doing a phenomenal job over the past few years. So thank you for highlighting these particular things that I think are vital to our communities. The next thing after this is affordable housing and trying to figure out how to actually get people into their own space so they can feel safe and comfortable. But this is a really good step. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other comments, Council? No, seeing none. Again, Joe and Cindy, this is always a struggle. It seems to be changing every day, and never seems to be enough. But I know that you both work very hard, and we're grateful for the work that you're doing. So thank you. Okay, so I think we had the motion read to us by Joe. So I'm looking for a mover now. Councillor Vanderheyden, seconded by Councillor Mayhew. I'm just going to ask for anyone against. Seeing none, that's moved. Now we're going to move on to 11B7, the communications strategy, a report from Marcia Vanek and Legislative Services Manager Clerk, presentation by Aaron Ohosky, Boulevard Strategy Group. So I see Aaron was on the screen and Marcy's here. So whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Warden. I won't say too much before passing it over to Aaron, but I did want to say how excited I am about this report and beginning the implementation phase of this project. I think Aaron from Boulevard Strategy Group has done a wonderful job of taking all the feedback from the various stakeholders involved in this process and finding a shared vision and strategy for our communications going forward. So with that, I will pass it over to Aaron Ohosky from Boulevard Strategy Group to walk us through the strategy that we are recommending for approval today.
Thank you, Marcy, and through you, Warden Warwick and Council. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm just stalling till the slides come up so I can get right to presenting. Thanks so much for those. So it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon presenting your draft Middlesex County Communication Strategy. This is just a draft at this phase. What we would like to do is seek your approval in principle for the contents that you see before you this afternoon. Notwithstanding any comments or suggested revisions you might have, we would incorporate those and bring back a final version for information at a future meeting. So that's the decision point before you this afternoon. Next slide, please. So the communications strategy itself, within your RFP document, there are 3 phases. The research and consultation findings phase concluded back at the end of January, where we did a lot of the research, the stakeholder consultations, a very robust process involving employees that are currently in communications related roles in your organization, your senior management, the warden, past warden, and feedback from some interested counselors, as well as a session specifically with local CAOs from local municipalities and some of the communications resources that are already available in the communities that you serve at a local level. When we completed that phase, we got straight to work on developing the communication strategy itself. So that work has been undergoing for the past month and a half, and a draft is before you this afternoon. Once we conclude this phase 2, we'll be going on to phase 3, which is preparing supportive policies and procedures. And that's just a formal way of saying we are going to get right to work on checking off some of those items on the list of recommendations off over the next month, where we think we can add the most value to Middlesex County. Just a quick synopsis of some of the themes we heard in phase 1 of the project when it comes to communications at the county. That the county needs to be more proactive and more responsive when it comes to getting communications out to the community. Internally, there needs to be greater role clarity and direction on overall goals. That there needs to be more opportunities to collaborate with across departments and with local municipalities. That county communications need to be connected. They need to be clearly looking like they're coming from the county, regardless of the department they're originating for. That we need to balance the corporate overall narrative stories about Middlesex County with the day-to-day operational needs of your departments. That there needs to be tools to support members of council as partners in communications. That there are limited resources and that any recommendations we propose should be phased and feasible. that expenses need to match community impact and target audiences, so being as strategic as possible with every dollar spent. That right now there is some communications practices in the county where you have friendly, fun, and engaging a tone, and we'd like to see that continue. Professional, of course, but friendly, fun, and engaging. The need for two-way communication and community engagement with your audiences, that there's challenges associated with the multi-tiered public service delivery. So there's confusion around who does what when it comes to government services, as well as after hours considerations, and making sure they're incorporating, particularly in light of the upcoming Ontario Working for Workers Act and the otherwise known as Right to Unplug legislation. Next slide, please. So the communication strategy itself, if you can think of it as two parts, the first part is really a shared vision, so a framework, really answering key questions about Middlesex County communications. That includes what the county's communications goals are, your target audiences, and message framework, so that there's a consistent framework that all departments can tap into where applicable and connect to those key messages. The second part of the communication strategy are the recommendations themselves. There are a lot of recommendations, but my assessment is that this is an ambitious but very doable work plan over the next 4+ years. They come in 4 categories: the advancing the communications goals, strengthening your existing communications channels and looking at potential new ones, supporting you, members of council, as partners in communications, and then the last category is resourcing recommendations. So with regards to that shared vision for the communications framework, there are 3 parts. The first is the goals, answering the question, why is the county creating a communication strategy, and making sure there's a common frame of reference for that. The next is the target audiences. So who does the county need to reach to advance its goals, and how can we be strategic in doing so? And the third component of the shared vision is the message framework. So what are those key messages that your communications should consistently, continually reinforce? For the communications goals, 10 were identified as part of the communication strategy process, really aligned to what we heard in phase 1. The first is responsive communications. The second is making sure the county is really seen as the go-to for news and information about programs, services, and decisions. The third is that communications are proactive and integrated in pushing out good news stories about Middlesex County. The fourth is making sure there's high trust and confidence in the county and its operations. The fifth is encouraging two-way communication to inform policy and council decisions. The sixth is making sure that there's clear, proactive communications related to public safety. The seventh is making sure external audiences and marketing to external audiences is a key goal within the communication strategy. Also, marketing specific county programs and services, whether it's your library programs, whether it's your pilot community transportation project, making sure that you're reaching the potential customers, clients, and audiences for those programs. The ninth goal is coordination with partners, so whether that's service delivery partners, local municipalities, or others. And 10th is showcasing the larger community, all that your county has to offer. In terms of the target audiences, and these are sub-segmented within the context of the report, but there are 6. The first 3 really are no surprise: residents, businesses from various sizes and sectors, as well as your external audiences. So this captures a lot of those audiences that are really under the great work that your Economic Development and Tourism Department are doing, from investments and talent attraction and visitors, but also considering City of London residents as external audiences, specifically as it relates to your paramedic service programs, as well as looking at potential funding partners as external audiences and prospective employees for Middlesex County itself. The fourth audience is local municipalities, and of course, it's really more than an audience, it's a collaborative partnership group. Service delivery partners, as well as adjacent communities, the City of London and nearby counties, and of course, interested Indigenous communities as well. The third and final part of the shared vision is the message framework. So what key messages does the county need to reinforce? So when we engaged internal stakeholders, members of council, external stakeholders, we were trying to find and hone in on those messages that county communication should consistently reinforce. The only exception, of course, being if there's public safety information that needs to get out really quickly, or if there's a very straightforward service delivery update, service disruption, meeting schedule, those probably don't need to be couched in larger messaging, but for the most part, external messaging from the county should really fit in one of these supporting messages. The overall message that we're trying to reinforce is that Middlesex County is an innovative, well-run organization offering high-value programs and services to the best community in which to live, visit, and do business in Southwestern Ontario. Your supporting messages to that main message relate to high-value programs and services that residents and business can trust, a well-run organization and leader in financial management, a leader in municipal government and public sector service delivery, that the county has competitive advantages helping businesses locate, launch, and grow, that it's a premier four-season destination, and lastly, that the county is a great place to call home with unparalleled lifestyle, range of attractions, and a great sense of community. So with that framework in place, that overall shared vision, we move on to the recommendations. And as I mentioned before, there are recommendations across 4 categories. Within the context of the report, the recommendations are phased into 4 timelines: year 1, which is 2022 this year, year 2, year 3, and then year 4 and beyond. So longer term recommendations. They're phased. It's a feasible work plan, but there are a lot of recommendations. It's more of a to-do list. Next slide, please. So in terms of the first category of recommendations, it's quite significant. There were 49 recommendations related to advancing communications goals. These are the same goals that are within the shared vision itself. The first 5 goals are really related to building capacity for a corporate communications function at Middlesex County. They really do require a coordination, telling the whole story of Middlesex County type of function. The last 5 goals, so public safety to showcasing the larger community, are really about coordination and continuous improvement. There's a lot of great work being done at the operating department level. It's a matter of collaborating, coordinating, and focusing on continuous improvement opportunities for those specific goals. And the recommendations, I won't go through all of them, but they are contained within the report. The next goal relates to enhancing your communications channels. And this is the largest section of recommendations. There are 60 recommendations, really more of a to-do list over 4+ years. The channels we looked at specifically were your visual identity. So making sure the way Middlesex County looks when you are putting out external messaging is consistent, that it looks like it's all coming from the same organization and landing in the way that you want it to with your audiences. The second was your website. So a lot of work underway with respect to your websites. The third relates to your many social media accounts at Middlesex County. The fourth channel relates to e-newsletters and management of subscription databases. The fifth relates to print collateral and use of digital signage. The sixth is earned media, better known as media relations. And the last is emerging channels. So that relates to potential looking at municipal application, the way the Temp Center has, podcasts, blogs. We're not recommending those be immediate, maybe get the other channels worked on first, but certainly we have line of sight to that as well. Next slide, please. The next set of recommendations relates to supporting counsel. And there are 4 here, but they're major. The first is we'd like to recommend developing a defined levels of service document so counselors know what they can expect from the organization. This would include giving you a heads up if there's really substantive media requests coming in, preparing key messages for controversial issues, letting you know when there's major issues bubbling up, but for whatever reasons, liability, litigation, other reasons the organization doesn't plan to respond or act, identifying products and channels designated for counsel news, putting procedures around social media sharing and use of counselor accounts, as well as guidelines and reminders, particularly for new counselors when speaking on county issues. It also includes developing a dedicated counselor feedback channel so that you know who to go to get your ideas and suggestions acted upon, and then monitoring resources required to communicate council news and decisions. The last category relates to resourcing. Next slide, please. So there are recommendations phased over 4 years. I will say your staff isn't, sitting waiting for this all to be complete. They're already aligning with this work. We've been working collaboratively since November on this. So year 1 is aligned with allocations that are in your 2022 operating budget. So all of these year 1 recommendations really have been accounted for in 2022, but a heads up that there will be some asks in future years. They're outlined here. And of course, year 4 is really developing business cases based on the outcomes of the previous 3 years. Next slide, please. So the next steps, first of all, is to get your feedback this afternoon and make any revisions that might be required as a result of that. Once we have that, we'll work on finalizing the communication strategy itself and rolling up our sleeves and getting to work on phase 3. For phase 3, the recommendations we'd like to check off for you during the month of April are first an internal role clarity framework, that who does what among corporate communications and operating departments, developing a formal media relations policy and associated templates that go along with that, taking a first start at that council levels of service documents, so you know what you can expect, and of course very timely for an incoming council after the 2022 municipal election, updating your corporate use of social media policy, as well as assisting with job description preparation. Next slide, please. Final is just a giant thank you. Thank you so much for your leadership and guidance during this process. Thank you to the team at Middlesex County, a great staff group, and thanks so much to your local CAOs and communications resources there who provided great input and insights during this process. I'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Ironically, I'm having problems with my own communications here. That's why I keep coming off the screen and on the screen. But Chris knows me well, and he knows that's my life. So we'll keep going from there. But I can see the screen, and I'm just wondering, does anybody have any questions or comments for Aaron? Yes, Councillor Burghardt-Jessen, go ahead.
Great, and thank you through the warden. Thank you, Aaron, for that presentation. There is a lot of information in the report that's on our agenda, and I appreciate you condensing it and giving us the Reader's Digest version. But I really am excited by what you've presented and what you've put together. I think many of us around the Horseshoe have been looking for a communication strategy and in a way for us to grow and I use the word in air quotes because I know that we've got a team that's been doing the best that they can with how we've been operating, but to professionalize what we're doing. And I really think that what you have drafted leads us in that direction. So thank you for that. And I certainly look forward to the work that, because I think this all falls under Marcy's department, in seeing her grow this and really run with it. So thanks for that.
Thank you. I too, I'd like to echo those comments, and I think it's just an exciting thing that we're going forward to. We do so many good things in the county. It'll be great to see them out for everyone to see. I did see Councillor Vanderheyden's hand up, so whenever you're ready, Joanne, go ahead.
Thank you very much, through the warden, and really good to see you, Aaron. It's been a while, pre-COVID, almost at the very beginning there. A couple of things when I was listening to your presentation and after reading the report, I really think communications are vital to our communities these days. I mean, with press, newspapers going out of press and all the things that are happening, and how then can we still, give our message? And we're really bad at tooting our own horn in our communities. We take all the guff, but we're not very good at celebrating the successes. So I think that's a really good thing. Just a couple of points. One, the after hours piece, I really think that's important. And that's important to our citizens and to us. who do you call, when do you call, why do you call? And then, of course, the instantaneous response people believe that they should get. Well, if you're calling at 7 o'clock at night and telling me that a neighbor is cleaning out their septic system onto the road, you know, I can't get somebody there in 10 minutes when it's after 7 o'clock at night. So things like that. So everybody has the information of where to go and what to do in those situations. Social media, you didn't touch too much on that. I find that part of communications really incredibly frustrating, as I think a lot of my colleagues do. The harassment, the negativity, how do we turn that around? How do we turn that culture to the benefit of our county and our communities? The backup press, I think, is vital. I know that we have as much backup as we can, and Councillor Burkhart Justin spoke to that. But I also know that sometimes we feel like we're floundering when we have to, deal with some really significant issues, and how do we get that back up? So I'm really happy to hear that. And then the one thing I had a question on was when you talked about monitoring council communications. What exactly is behind that? Like, is it like grow points for us when we do something and someone, our communication expert, sees that maybe we could have some help, or is it truly monitoring what we put on social media, or how does that come into play?
Thank you, Councillor Vanderheyden, and through you, Warden Warwick. On that, really the monitoring council communications needs really relates to, there's a trend in growth, and many of you might already see it on the expectations that councils have for their administration for communicating council decisions as a whole. So some examples within the strategy itself are, first off, the great work that you've done with your first annual Warden's report. So that does require resources and needs. There's recommendations in the council report for ongoing kind of what happened at council debriefs. So the resourcing recommendations for now within that will capture that and be able to put out those types of products. But should those expectations for specific channels to get out council news grow, just have to keep an eye on that and make sure that your organization is properly resourced to do that and do it in a way that does the great decisions and great work you do justice.
That's great. And any other questions or comments, Council? Councillor Mayhew, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and through you, I enjoyed that report extremely much. I'm expected as mayor to give a report to County Council, and this was alluded to, Aaron, earlier, that what we've done as a County Council, I'm proud of, and I reiterate to that information to my council on a quarterly basis. Every 3 months, I give a report on County Council activity. What I'm concerned about is that is self-written. And if other mayors are doing that to their councils, there may be mixed messaging coming out. It would be nice to have some consistency on the message that the county provides to those who are not at County Council, but are providing a leadership within the municipalities within the County Council. So it would be wonderful if there could be a coherent message to the municipalities that are part of the family of Middlesex County. Councilors are very interested on what we do at the county level, but often do not take the initiative or have the opportunity, perhaps I should say, to delve into some of the work, not just the accomplishments we make, but the business aspects of it too. How much did the tenders come in at? Things of that nature. And I really think that if there could be a quarterly report to be directed towards the family of municipalities that make up Middlesex County, it would be so beneficial, because every time I just did the report that I'm sending my council, it'll be given to them tomorrow at tomorrow's meeting. And yeah, I would really like that message to be in harmony with my other companions on this horseshoe, and to have a consistent message. Any thought on that?
Thank you so much. Through you, Warden Warwick. Yes, so there's a number of things in the recommendations that I think will help. The first is that we're recommending once you have a junior communications resource in place, that's a year one recommendation, that that you start producing kind of a what happened at council. Something we heard from members of council through the phase one phase is that there is a lot of that need for you have to kind of create the communication, to write the communication yourself, which some don't mind doing, but that lack of consistency could be a concern, and you are all very busy people. So if we can help you with the messaging, definitely would like to do that. So that what happened at council brief could be a very important tool to help you bring that back to your communities, and hopefully that's helpful. You might have you know, a certain local flavor you want to put on that report. You might want to editorialize and how it relates to the local community you're returning to, but that consistent messaging, that factual yet engaging document on what happened at council would be there. The other thing that the report recommends, and this was based on collaboration with local municipal CAOs and communications resources where they exist, is developing a communications working group, seeing if there's interest in that, so that even at the staff level, there's more coordination, more opportunity for, you know, really forging partnerships rather than an audience type of relationship with local CAOs. So I hope at the staff level that will help. And of course, very exciting work, separate project, but through your official plan engagement process, through feedback from local CAOs, we do have a session developed explicitly for local councillors who are part of the family of Middlesex County municipalities, but maybe not directly at the county horseshoe itself. So I think that's a very exciting step in the right direction that we're piloting with that particular project.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, Council? Well, it's been a really good report, and you know, thank you again, Erin, for all of the hard work that you've been doing, and Marcy too. It's been really good to get this done, and as I said before, I'm really looking forward to seeing us get underway with this. And having said that, I do have a motion in front of me that we approve the strategy and principle, and then a final version to be prepared and circulated to council for information at a future date. So can I get someone to move that? Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Ropp, and anyone against? Seeing none. Okay, and then we'll move on to 11B8, which is a tender for concrete curb and gutter. Ryan, you're back on again.
Thanks, Madam Warden. Through you to council. This is for our concrete curb and gutter contract. There were 3 bids. Roebuck was the low bidder this year with $194,212. They're our usual contractors, so we've worked with them many times in the past, and they're very good to work with. So it's recommended that we accept the bid for $194,212.
All right, any questions for Ryan? Having none, okay, can we have a mover? Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Brennan. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now 11B9, tender for traffic paint, MH22. Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to council. I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory on this one. This went out to tender last year in 2021. It was a 3-year tender with multiple municipalities in on it.
We're having one of those days, Warden. These are the days that your IT director warned you about.
Well, and I have IT here right here, so I should
It's
actually
okay.
travel with one
There he
as
comes.
a
Okay.
personal.
He's back.
I saw him
There we go.
move. We're good.
Sorry, I think I'm back. I'm
Try
not sure
again.
where I'm not sure where I left off, but so this was actually went out for tender in 2021. It's a 3-year contract with the surrounding municipalities. Within that contract, we do have the ability for us or the supplier to give us a 90-day notice and opt out of that contract in case things happen like we've basically run into with COVID. And that happened this year. We received notice that they could no longer supply us with the quoted prices back in 2020. Just, did I cut out again?
Yeah, you did.
Keep
And
going. You're doing great.
I'm just glad it's you. That's all.
Sorry. So we reissued.
Tell your kids to get off of.
There's no one online. So we reissued for the 2 years that were remaining on that tender to get us through COVID and see how things go out. But basically, it ended up coming out, well, obviously higher than it was before, but the county portion of the contract is $43,000, $120 plus HST. It's total $3.6 million contract for the entirety of us and the local municipalities, the surrounding municipalities. Our recommendation is that we accept the bid in the amount of $743,120. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to help if I can.
Any questions? If not, can I have a mover for the Ryan's motion put in front of us? Councillor Corneliuson, seconded by Councillor Smith. Anyone against? Nope. Okay, we're moving on to 10B10, the tender for crushing stockpiling. And again, Ryan, we'll just keep working through this and hopefully everything works out all right.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Warren, through you to council. This is our quotation for crushing and stockpiling at our Mills Pit. We had 2 bids received, but only 1 bid was compliant with our tender requirements. The winning bid was, or the low bid was Associated Paving and Materials Limited at $153,600, including HST. We have not worked with them in the past, but we have contacted their references and they check out great. They are an actual asphalt contractor as well, so their ability to crush stone is pretty good. I'm not concerned about that at all. So our recommendation is that the bid amount of $153,600 be accepted. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions? Nope, seeing none, then we have the recommendation. So looking for a mover. Councillor Robb, seconded by Councillor Brennan. Anyone against? Seeing none, so moved. Thank you, Ryan. Now we're moving on to correspondence and information. So we have 11C1, a letter from Enbridge, 11C2, a letter from NDMNRF. 11C3, there's a media release, and congratulations for this one, Kara, if you're there, because that was a great award that you won, and I'm sure that we'll get to see more about it in the coming months. So moving on to 11C4, the AMO policy update, and 11C5, 2021 council remuneration and expenses, 11C6, public sector salary disclosure, and 11C7, 2006 Strathmere Lodge Capital Works debenture. So looking for a mover to accept all those for information. Somebody want to move that? Okay, Councillor DeVete, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Brennan. And again, if anyone's against, please raise your hand. And seeing none, that's moved. Thank you. And inquiries, seeing none. 13, new business. So we're going to go into closed session. And the next portion of the meeting is going to be closed at 3:18 p.m. in order to consider labor relations and employee negotiations pursuant to subsection 2392D of the Municipal Act 2001. So again, looking for a mover to go into closed. Councillor Richard, seconded by Councillor Mayhew. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, we'll go into closed, and I'm sure